Alright, you guys, I am back at the scene that I had set up before when I gave an interview, which was a one-on-one interview, and I never posted to any social media or to YouTube because I think I'm going to be using it for a documentary now. But I'm back at the scene of the crime where I was addressing addiction and addiction awareness and how we need to start putting belief in a lost group of people who are actually, sure they've been wrong in the past and they've been hurtful in the past and they are doing that a lot of times because they're projecting, it's kind of like a projection because of the hurt that they felt from either a trauma or a loss or something in their life that they just are having trouble facing and dealing with. So then they turn to the wrong places like drugs, alcohol, sex, whatever have you. But we need to start coming alongside these addicts, not criminalizing them, not throwing them into, low-income housing and then just having the government deal with them. No, we need to start welcoming the idea of coming alongside each other and really making a difference for the addict. I know it seems counterintuitive, but that is exactly what I'm proposing. They've done it in Portugal's system, abroad, along with like Amsterdam has adopted this system, where they decriminalized all small drug possession charges, and they took all the drug offenses that were criminalized in their system and instead offered them therapy, which a lot of Americans need, but only 1 in 10 Americans actually go and get the appropriate therapy that they so desperately need, either because they're told that they have to or because they just don't want to, which it's their decision. If they don't want to, they don't have to go. They don't have to implement the therapy. But at Portugal, by doing this and offering it to the addict, they actually saw a 2-fold increase in the number of Portugal citizens that actually seeked out therapy that was offered to them. So anyone can relate to this, that whenever you tell someone that they have to do something, you don't want to do it. So telling someone or focusing on sobriety, and we've been pounding this idea into people's brains like, you have to get sober, but you have to get sober, but you need to be sober. And by doing so, you've got a bunch of rebellious individuals, which is human nature to rebel against being told to do something. But breaking away from that status quo would be to accept. Acceptance is the culture that we need to really implement in America. And acceptance is what's going to get us from part where we're at to part where we need to go, which is Portugal. And Portugal is such a small country, but heroic in my eyes, because just by doing so and by decriminalizing these small drug offenses, they saw a 50% reduction in the number of mortality rates from opiate overdoses. In 3 years. And a 90% reduction in 5. And we have people dying of heroin or prescription narcotics that are being prescribed readily available to people. And if it's not readily available to them, guess what they're doing? They're stealing it from someone else, or they're using their food stamps or their government supplied handouts to barter for the drugs anyways. It's time to accept what's going on in our country and start implementing a strategy that actually works. Offering therapy to individuals rather than forcing it upon them. Offering a social worker to actually track their progress through life and make sure that they're grounded and able to get through life, financially supported, on their own, but they have resources available, but they're unaware of the resources. It may seem like, oh, well, they're idiots. Well, yeah, well, where's the education? Like, we need to be educating each other, helping each other. Acceptance is the culture that America needs, not who we're going to let in and who's privileged enough to be a part of our entitled community, but rather a community that supports one another, supports local businesses, small and large, to fight and eliminate this opioid crisis from even occurring, and realizing that who are we to judge? There's a judge that we call Your Honor, and that's the judge here on earth. But our judge in heaven, he is the one who will judge us all someday. So, and he plays no favorites. So the next time that you, perhaps, or a loved one, perhaps, or friend, or neighbor, or whoever you see pointing and blaming, ask them and ask yourself, who am I to blame? Have I done everything in my power to come alongside and make sure that that individual is taken care of, and make sure that that individual is ready for what comes next in life? Or have I not? Portugal, this study was published in 2013. They started implementing the decriminalization of drugs in 2009. My brother died in 2013. When apparently there was knowledge that, a different system did work. And guess what? Every single year since then, more people have been dying. Every 8 seconds, someone is dying worldwide of a opioid overdose, opioid specific, which is also available and also going to be seeked out by these individuals who are fighting a clock. It's a clock, people. If they're without their drug, then guess what they feel? I watched my brother go through it. Can you say the same? It's terrible. And we have a complete group of people who seek belonging. They seek refuge from a nation and a culture that we're not giving it to them. And that's wrong. And we were wrong to do it. So, I've looked at several different studies, including Rat Park from the late 70s and early 80s. They were looking at how light affected rats as we walked into a room, and they would start moving around, and they were excited about the light. And so then they did that, they saw what makes rats more excited, what makes people more excited, and started focusing on the brain's reward system, which the brain's reward system is, we get an idea in our heads, and that idea sparks a thought. I believe the idea come from the universe or from a higher power, perhaps. And then that drives a thought. And then our thought drives an emotion. How do we feel about it? What's your gut tell you on how you feel about that thought? And then it goes thought, emotion in this cyclical pattern until we decide it's time to express that in some way. If we don't express it verbally or write it down so that we understand what that thought actually means to us, with our higher functioning thinking and our gray matter and other outreaches of our brain, if we don't express it, then it'll start to come out in other ways, like hallucinations. But if we do address it and write it down, that's the behavior. So thought, well, idea, thought, emotion, behavior. And then that behavior drives another emotion. And maybe it's the same emotion, but then you're influenced from other people, maybe that you share it with. And then you combine the two emotions and you make one emotion that's paired with that behavior. So if that is an emotion or a gut feeling of love, and you pair love with the behavior, you're going to remember it. And so it goes idea, thought, emotion, which is the amygdala of our brain, behavior, writing it out, which you could go to like the prefrontal, well, not prefrontal cortex, but the motor gyri of the cingulate, I think. But the motor gyrus, which is in the temporal lobe of your brain.